Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Cut and Splice. This is Matt.
This is Gil.
And this is Jason. And tonight we are blessed to be joined again with Andrew.
Thank you, Jason. That's right, everyone. I'm back, ready to bring the fun back to the podcast.
The fun we've been missing. No.
It was unfortunate we didn't have you do the opening again, as you so masterfully did once before. But go ahead, Matt. Let's continue.
Okay, so this time around we are talking about Steven Spielberg's 2002 masterpiece, and yes, I am inserting my normative values into that. Minority Report, starring Tom Cruise, based off of a Philip K. Dick short story, a science fiction story set, albeit fairly implausibly, in 2054, with a premise that we have a pre-crime unit that uses precognizance, known as precogs, who can see murders before they happen, and we are basically dealing with a really interesting philosophical dilemma where people are, basically we're dealing in a situation where we can stop murders before they happen, but at the expense, possibly, of civil liberties. Tom Cruise plays the chief of the pre-crime unit, who is haloing or imprisoning people for future crimes, and it all seems perfect until John Anderton, played by Tom Cruise, is flagged himself for a possible future murder, and everything starts to unravel. So, I mean, full disclosure, I've watched this movie at least once every year since it's come out, at least. So I've probably seen it like 35 times. So I'm biased. I'll let the other guys talk about it.
Well, and I guess we can say that the reason why we chose this movie, we've been debating many options to bring Andrew back. But I guess this one was brought up, Andrew, right? Because you're not as big of a fan of it as say maybe the three of us might be. Even maybe the three of us might be on a spectrum. But and that's why it was suggested.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think anyone's as big of a fan of this movie as Matt is. I think that could probably be said for like even the people involved in it. I think he is the top fan.
I do, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but just to chime in on what Andrew's saying, I do believe you listed this as in your top like 10 or maybe even top 5 of the films of this century.
It's at least in my top 10. Yeah.
Well, I mean the Spielberg one, right?
What?
Or sorry, what were you saying?
I think it's in his top 10 of all films of this century, like everything since 2001. Century. Yeah.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah. No, sorry, I missed that. I was letting the cat in.
No problem.
But the yeah. Also, I was gonna comment. I try to stop myself before we recorded. It also seems that Matt has this very strong affinity for movies that have to do with freedom, and we've had this on the podcast before. This is not released yet, but it would be released by when this is released. But we did like The Lives of Others and Thank You for Smoking. We debated the whole merits of how that movie was about freedom. So I feel like there's movies that have to do with freedom and and choice and things like that. Especially like anything that's like when the government comes down on the individual. I feel like Matt, it gives like an extra oomph in Matt's, you know,
As it should.
psyche.
As it should. But
It's
to
got-
also,
As any true libertarian should. Yeah.
Gil, also, not only is this a film that I'll just say at least has some libertarian, let's just say themes or tones or something like that in it. It's also a Tom Cruise movie, so that's going to be a big deal for Matt as well.
And Spielberg, yeah, because I
And
mean,
Spielberg.
if I'm not mistaken,
Triple,
Matt
yeah.
several times have said that Spielberg is like the greatest filmmaker of all time, right, Matt?
Not a
I've
difficult
said,
remark to make.
I've said that he's the greatest living filmmaker.
Oh, living.
Uh, I would not deny the possibility that he's the greatest filmmaker ever, but I have said greatest living to put in that caveat of like Kubrick and Hitchcock and so on and so forth. But no,
Okay.
I mean Spielberg is definitely up there.
So this is our very long-winded way of saying this is a very Matt movie.
It's as the kids say, it's Matt AF.
It
Totally.
completes the trilogy, right? So it's Thank You for Smoking, Lives of Others, and Minority Report.
It has politics, it has philosophy, and it's aspects of noir. Tom Cruise, like you said, I mean, yeah, it's Matt all day. It's as cinegasmic as it can be for Matt.
So maybe the way we could start it off is maybe I should I'll side with Andrew a bit on my reaction to it, rewatching it this time, and maybe Andrew can give his review, and then Jason and Matt can give their counter. But I really like this movie. I actually rated it a 9 back when, so I was a pretty big fan of it. It's pretty captivating stuff, and it's the themes and everything just really worked well. I felt like this time around, I always try to look at things in the lens of like, if I like the movie, what's wrong with it? If I dislike the movie, what's right with it when I'm watching it for this podcast? So I did notice a few touches that I felt like was a bit off tone and a bit unnecessary, and even though it's a very fast-paced movie, I feel like it could have been slightly shorter. So there's a few things that I did notice that I would consider demoting it under a 9, maybe like 8.5. Like I would struggle to go all the way to an 8. But yes, and we can get, of course, deeper into them with spoilers and all that. But that was my overall reaction. That yes, it's captivating. It's Spielberg. It's a great premise. But it's not a 100% home run, which is why I feel like I should slightly demote it from my, I guess, initial reaction to it when I was younger, and I'm sure was kind of like blown away by it.
Mhm.
But Andrew, what were your some of your like criticisms or things that bothered you about it?
Well, I think the first thing I should say about it is like this is my first time watching this movie in like several years. The last time I watched it was again when Matt made me. so it's definitely interesting because this time around I just finished watching it today, and I definitely enjoyed the movie more than I remembered liking it before, and I think I had similar feelings. And I feel like there was a lot that I wanted to like about the movie. You know, it has spectacular cast, awesome cinematography, compelling story, that sort of thing. But kind of thinking about it and really trying to break down my feelings on it, I felt it was something that felt fairly simplistic. It's a very focused story revolved around Tom Cruise's detective narrative, but it's still quite a longer piece at over 2.5 hours. I think the inciting incident um, where Tom's character is basically targeted for the murder that he's supposed to commit doesn't kick in until like after well into half an hour into the movie, um, which was I was surprising. I actually took a look at the clock, just trying to figure out keep track of the pacing of it. So there's some of that for me, and I just think about in terms of rewatchability. Like I'm nowhere near close to where Matt is. Like where he wants to watch it like once a year. And when it comes to the how I would rank like Spielberg movies or Tom Cruise movies I would want to go back to rewatch or share and recommend with others, it still isn't something that really falls into that category for me. Like I think it's a nice thing to watch every once in a while, and it was interesting doing a deep dive on the podcast, but just it feels like something is missing keeping it from being a home run. Um, I think part of it might be that the Andrew Tate character can be a somewhat unlikable. Someone who's in a fairly dark place. He's a cop who's a drug addict, and he's also arresting people right on the before they really do anything wrong. So it's hard to be sympathetic, even though we can relate a lot to the fact that he's gone through an incredibly sad tragedy. But at the same time, like he's somebody who's very willing to imprison people. But the second that he becomes the target, he suddenly does not believe in the system as much. So I think that does kind of make it a bit hard to root for his character. And then I think as the film progresses and we get towards like the third act and we shift into the end game, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in there, it just felt a little odd. It felt like a little disjointed from the rest of the story. So I'll get into that a bit more later on, but those are my initial thoughts.
What would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10?
It's hard to say because I don't really think about movies in terms like that. I'd probably say it's an 8, just because there's a lot of really compelling things about it. But again, it's not something that I would really want to go back towards like I would for some of the other movies around that time. I think I'd probably want to rewatch War of the Worlds before I would probably go back to this one. Definitely Last Samurai feel like would be more compelling from something that was made around the same time. In terms of like sci-fi, a movie like where I would want to watch at least once a year, Interstellar, would be something I just find to be more interesting and compelling than this beloved movie of Matt's.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's still pretty high praise on a scale of 1 to 10. Jason, do you want to chime in?
I'm just surprised because even though I know you both said some positive stuff about it, I thought Gil and Andrew were going to say much more negative reviews in terms of their grade for the movie because I really love this movie, but I was trying to decide if it would be an 8 or a 9 for me. So that's weird to be, but watching this movie this time was the first time I've seen it in probably at least 10 to 15 years, I would say. I know I saw it in theaters, and I know I saw it probably when it came out on DVD, like I probably rented it, and I probably saw it at least once or twice in the following years. So maybe 3 times total. But I was definitely around 2004, 2005. I was like a really big Colin Farrell fan. I still am a big fan of his, but that's when his big studio movies were hitting left and right, like one right after the other. And I was like trying to go see every single thing he was in. So I know for sure I'd seen it at least 3 times. And then, even though I always liked the movie, I never owned it until just recently. And I never really had a chance or made the effort to watch it, even though I've always liked this movie. So it was just a weird thing. It's a movie I've always liked, hadn't seen it in over 15 years probably. And it was interesting seeing it again. I really liked this viewing as well. I definitely noticed a few things that kind of irked me a little bit, but not anything that would like ruin the movie or anything like that. Just stuff that I was like, oh, that's a little weird. I wouldn't have done that if I made this movie. Yeah, I think I'd probably do like an 8.5, somewhere around there. I think it's a very solid movie, and it's I don't think that we get a whole lot of sci-fi that's as solid as this is. And yeah, it's a pretty great movie.
That's a good point about the just good sci-fi is tough to come by, for sure.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And then the fact that so I do think me and Jason are in a pretty similar place, and I'm not surprised if Andrew is also in a similar place, and we'll see what Matt says. But I think it's important to point out that maybe the reason why we're more tame or anything, it's because it's Spielberg, because I guess the standards are so high. Although I'm surprised that Andrew said that like War of the Worlds would be a revisit before this, but so maybe those were where the differences are, the rewatchability of
it. I just feel like War of the Worlds is a bit more fun, and
I didn't.
I think it's a bit more fun. It's a bit more suspenseful. You know, it's a friggin' alien invasion versus a detective story. There's a little bit more there.
Yeah, but this is a movie that doesn't have any child characters. That's more fun to me.
It's not. No, that's not true. That's not true. Therefore,
yeah, his kid died. That's the entire
still
point.
Still a character.
Well, I think War of the Worlds to me is more so because of the gravity of the source material and how it was disappointing compared to it.
That's true, because it's a remake. That's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why which is why I felt like, well, I'm not talking about the movie, but the book. I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, but because I've read the book and all that, so I'm very close to it. So maybe that was one of the reasons why I was like, oh, come on, Spielberg, you could have done better with that. You know, I know he modernized the premise and everything, but it could have been like slightly, closer to the source material.
I don't want to sound like I'm talking trash about War of the Worlds either. It's got some real good quality stuff in it.
It was shot on Fujifilm.
Ah, yes.
that alone. What high praise can we give it?
Possibly the most important thing about it.
Yeah.
Anyways, but Matt?
Minority Report is a movie that has flaws, and I have seen the flaws. I know the flaws. It's still a freaking masterpiece. You're talking about a movie that I mean, it is not simple. In a weird way, it's the best use of a MacGuffin in cinema history that I can think of. But beyond that, I mean, it deals with really basic but poignant, strong ethical concepts around free will and determinism and due process, and like I mean, I think there's an underlying issue that's really important now when it comes to, like, okay, well, outcome is we don't have any murders. Process is we might actually be imprisoning a lot of people who are innocent. And there's a brilliance in the first, like, 15 some minutes of the movie. I'll probably save it until the spoiler section. That really steelmans one side. And then we spend 2.5 hours with this character going through this process and realizing that the Steel Man is actually probably not that strong. And that maybe, just maybe, the process matters more than the outcomes. Yeah, the movie came out in 2002. I was still pretty young when I saw this movie for the first time. And just like most movies that I saw when I was as young as I was, I just kind of enjoyed the visuals. I enjoyed the action sequences and so on and so forth. I've already, I've always had a bit of an attention span, so like the 2.5 hour runtime didn't really faze me. But yeah, as I've watched it again and again and again and again and again, as I've gotten older and read more, and honestly, I think there's a possibility that this movie is actually smarter than Steven Spielberg. I think that there's a possibility that there's more to this than the filmmakers actually intended.
That's how I feel about Munich.
Yeah. And I mean, that's saying a lot because I love Steven Spielberg. I mean, greatest living filmmaker. But that's where I stand. Again, there are flaws. Like, John Anderton kicks out the window of a car and then he crawls out, and for some reason the window in the car is still there. And there's another flaw in the movie that's a little bit more relevant to the plot that we might bring up later on that isn't it's still a problem, but it's just so good that I don't fucking care. But yeah, this isn't come and see. I'm not going to give it a 10, but I'm going to give it like a 9.5.
Yeah, I guess I could see how maybe in a similar way to The Dark Knight, maybe that's sort of your reaction to it, is that it's such a solid movie and a solid movie watching experience that it almost overtakes any mild errors that are there. And maybe for the three of us, it's, for me, the way I look at it, it's a better than average science fiction movie. So that's why I really liked it when I first watched it, so I give it a 9. But really, more than average science fiction movie is an 8. An amazing science fiction is a 9, and 2001: A Space Odyssey is a 10. That's pretty much like the way it goes for me with sci-fi. But yeah, so that's why I think it makes sense. A more mature vote for me would be like an 8, just because of some of the flaws. Because it's not The Dark Knight. Because I rated The Dark Knight a 9, but it's close. It's close. It's not bad. It wasn't my top 10 Spielberg movies. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than The Dark Knight, but
hey, take it easy there, guys.
Okay.
Now you're just being over the top now.
I don't know about that. I don't know what to tell you. Like, because I mean, it's maybe your opinion alone there, because nobody's putting it in the pantheon of greatest action movies ever made, like T2 and Dark Knight, and even I would say like Fury Road. I feel like a lot of people would consider it a better movie. I wouldn't, but it's in the pantheon of big budget action movies.
I feel like those are all very odd movies to compare it to, but yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
just mean like as an
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
action oriented, because it's a fast paced action oriented big budget movie. So and it's actually not that dissimilar from The Dark Knight as far as its complexity. It's like the themes it's struggling with, and yeah, I don't think it's a
well,
bad comparison.
well, I mean, it's a rough comparison, but in terms of the concepts that it's dealing with, I think that Minority Report actually, I think it deals with higher and more complex ideas than, say The Dark Knight, and it has less morally reprehensible answers than The Dark Knight. Even though I disagree with some of the answers in Minority Report, I mean, I just enjoy. I enjoy the exploration of the ideas, and this is probably where we should get into spoilers.
I was going to say we better get
Yeah.
into spoilers because I'm just scratching my head at this point.
Before
Yeah.
Matt explodes.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess we can lead into spoilers. I mean, I will say about The Dark Knight, it's of course like themes, like you can't really, like a merit of a movie is not just based on its themes, because some movies have like, very, very interesting themes, but the movie just doesn't hold up. I think what's special about movies like T2 and The Dark Knight is they sort of like uh, set a tone for like, oh my god, this is like a new kind of movie. Like I didn't know this was possible, type of thing. But I think T2 more so just the special effects and just the and just that it all came together like better than expected almost. I feel like, and just made Schwarzenegger such a massive star. But I feel like The Dark Knight just made you believe in movies again. And the power of movies. Like, oh my god, you can actually make a movie this powerful and make it an action movie and make it a superhero movie and all that stuff. I don't think Minority Report does that. Maybe it comes close to doing it for science fiction, but to me, it would be more like a movie like Moon or Ex Machina. Those would be science fiction movies that made me believe like, oh my god, we can have amazing science fiction. You know, but yeah, that would be my personal opinion. But Minority Report comes close.
Well, I mean, Moon and Ex Machina, not to spoil any future possible episodes for us. I mean, those are 9.5s for me,
Oh,
at least. I mean, uh, I mean, science fiction is one of those spaces in cinema that seems to go underappreciated, so far as I can tell. And especially bold science fiction. Like Star Trek, not like pre Jar Jar Abrams Star Trek science fiction in cinema, where there is something to be said about modern society told in a futuristic universe or an alternate universe or something like that, uh, and done well. I mean that's in a different stratosphere of
Well,
filming.
let's save it for the Ex Machina episode.
Yeah, I mean,
Stay
actually,
tuned,
might
everyone.
be a double episode there, Ex Machina and Moon.
yeah,
Sure.
we need to talk about Ava.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
I would want to hear from Andrew because I watched this movie now a couple of weeks ago, with spoilers. Like, what are some of the more specific things? Because in case I forget any.
First of all, I just want to say if y'all are doing a double episode on Ex Machina and Moon, like definitely please count me in. Especially if you all start talking about Star Trek, because That's deep to my heart. That's as sci-fi as it gets for me. And it's interesting. We start bringing out these titles, Dark Knight, and talking about Star Trek and some of these other great pieces of sci-fi. And I think it helps to highlight some of the things I did not appreciate about Minority Report. I did feel the story is simple. I know it's touching on a lot of different themes, a lot of different political and philosophy topics that I feel are important, Matt, and I definitely think are even more relevant today in the light of all the debate about how police behave and some of the stories that have been highlighted in the media over the last few years. But at the same time, it feels like a very narrowly scoped movie. I think about, I'd say 2/3 of it is totally from, pretty much for the most part, I think from John Anderton's point of view, with a few little sidelines with Colin Farrell. And the whole thing is primarily a detective story. It's hyper focused on that, and it does feel like it becomes a very different movie once Anderton realizes or finds out that he's being framed. With the idea of protecting the whole precog program and helping it go national, and then it becomes a different thing. You start to experience more of a conspiracy theory movie, and he's now tasked with trying to. It doesn't necessarily even try to rescue this kid until the end of it, but it's more about him. Like he gets captured, he takes the fall, and then his wife saves him, and there were a lot of things that it just felt like a very different movie in that final act. And I definitely get that they were trying to make the ending happier than what the original version of the story was and what some of the earlier concepts within in the screenwriting process. But it just felt like everything was very neatly bundled at the end of the movie, aside from the fact that there are a bunch of potential murderers set free with the police watching them closely. So the ending definitely felt flat just because it was so tightly wrapped up. And I just felt like there could have been more meat on the bone, a bit more subtext, a bit more darkness and grit. I definitely think they made certain choices to keep it underneath that PG-13 umbrella, as opposed to like what they might have done when it was R. And even though I felt the movie was compelling, it just felt like there could have been a little bit more to it, a little more subtext, a little bit more to explore. I think from a story perspective.
Incidentally, there is a theory that after John gets haloed, everything else in the movie is actually just playing out in his own head, and it didn't actually happen.
That would make a certain amount of sense.
But I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not backing that up as where I stand, but people have raised that as as a possibility that it was just like Tim Blake Nelson,
He does say in that scene.
Morning, all your dreams come true and so on and so forth, and everything's gonna wrap up and everything it's kind of a rush and so on and so forth. And so I mean it's at least plausible that the end of the movie is just all playing in John's head while he's still haloed and incarcerated and so on and so forth. But I don't ascribe to that theory, but it's just a theory that I've heard and I thought it was relevant to bring up. So yeah,
that is interesting. I just wonder if there would need to be some sort of hint or like callback to that line to for anybody to read that into it.
I mean, with how much I read into the end of Leaving Las Vegas, I mean, I think that there's actually less to read into to the end of Minority Report, but that's another story. But
but the drill on it, like if that's the case, then so what was the motivation of what's his face? You know, the
Mark
Colin Farrell.
the boss guy.
Omar
Uh,
Burgess.
What?
Omar Burgess, played by Max von Sydow.
Yeah, Max von Sydow. Yeah, I was like, I don't recognize that name. It's like the character's name, the actor I know. Yeah, Max von Sydow. Because why would he? I know he set him up. There's the whole setup thing to make him think he's like chasing after the guy who took his kid. Like, why would he lock him up? I guess because he was bound to discover the flaws in the system.
No, it was because because Tom Cruise's character was looking into the mother.
Oh,
of
the mother.
the
Yeah.
female precog. Yeah, he discovered, that the memory was deleted, and so he was trying to look into her murder or her death. But I felt like that was something, it was kind of reiterated towards the end in Tom's big moving speech at the end. But yeah, that one felt a little weak for me, honestly.
By the way, just gotta give a shout out to Samantha Morton. I mean, that is like, I mean, she's like the female Gary Oldman. I mean, she's freaking amazing.
Would you go that far?
Yeah.
Like, let me just say this real quick. Hold on. Okay, I have absolutely nothing against Samantha Morton. I think she is very talented, and I think this is probably her best performance I've seen. But I mean, how many great performances has she really given? I'm looking at her filmography. It's like I've seen about 4 or 5 of them, and I know some of that's on me, but I'm just saying, like, you just said Gary Oldman. Like,
yeah, that would be
part
at
of
least
that
like
is
a
not
Meryl Streep or
part of that is
something.
not just his superior acting quality to every other actor on the planet. Some of it is his prolificness and his his filmography and everything. I mean, there's a lot that goes into saying that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we should do a bonus episode or maybe in the Gary Oldman episode we're planning on doing, we should do an episode as like the female Gary Oldman. I'm sure we're gonna get butchered for that.
Absolutely.
Politically incorrect.
I mean, like, I mean, she was fantastic in The Walking Dead. She was fantastic in The Whale. She was, I mean, she was fantastic in America. She was, I mean, like, she's a fucking chameleon. I mean, I don't.
She did look very different in The Whale. I just saw that on the plane too.
Yeah,
She did look. She looked very different in John Carter.
yeah, right. She's just great. Like, I mean,
That was a joke, by the way. She played an alien.
Right. Yeah.
If people saw that movie, Jason, they would get your joke.
People should see that movie because it's a great movie. But
Which
anyway,
movie? Because I don't think I
let's
saw it.
let's not go to moving on. Moving on.
Okay, moving on.
Just want to shout out Tim Riggins, Friday Night Lights, deep in my heart.
The fake Friday Night Lights, not the real one.
The TV show Friday Night Lights is made by the same director, asshole. Okay. You watched the first season with me. You got emotional. You liked it. Don't be all like yourself. I mean, you got Billy Bob Thornton playing Coach Taylor. Like, how can you compete with that?
But okay. Anyway,
yeah, but I am
both of them are
interested,
excellent. They just make me nauseous to watch them.
So Jason, I'm interested to hear, like, what did you feel this time around that didn't hit the mark quite?
Okay. I'm afraid that if I talk about the stuff that I didn't like about this movie, I'm gonna come off sounding like a little too negative. Like, why did I give it such a good grade? Good opinion of it. So let me just say, first of all, a few positive things. Okay, I love this movie, and it's already been said. Everyone's already pretty much said all the good things. I mean, the cast is so good. Colin Farrell is excellent, and
Is
you
he
know,
though?
he is excellent. I love him in this movie. I love him in most movies, but anyway,
He's not amazing. He's solid,
I
but
thought he
he's
was
not.
great. I thought he
It
was
felt like-
everything that the role needed.
It felt very early in his career. I think if he were to
It
do the
was
part
very
again
early
now,
in his career.
I think if he did the part now, he'd make some different choices. There's
Well,
one scene in particular that stands out where they're in the car factory and Tom Cruise gets away and he's making this angry face and he does this thing where he punches his hand and he punches the fist into his other hand. And I was like, yeah, that's a very amateurish choice there, Colin. I can tell.
Well,
Also,
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, throw it in there. Also, I felt like generally his character was just way too sophisticated for his own good. Not to mention that he got into the whole, like, essentially the Tom Cruise role so quickly there once he was out of the picture. Like he's moving the screens, and he's doing all the scanning. Like I felt like it was a bit like out of nowhere that he's so capable of doing
Don't you feel
something that he doesn't have any training in.
Don't you feel that that's very appropriate, considering that Max von Sydow is warning Tom Cruise during their little discussion in the first act, and he says, "Watch out for that guy. Show him around. Give him whatever he wants, but watch him carefully. He wants your job."
I see. So maybe he's gotten some training.
Right, and Henneman in that long scene in her like arboretum and everything, don't trust the who wants your job and everything, clearly referring to Danny Whitworth. So like people know about Danny Whitworth. People know about Colin Farrell's character as being somebody who's like pressing against John Anderton's role in this whole thing. So yeah, I think that's actually pretty well established.
But isn't this whole purpose as like he comes in there to
auditor
to try and like make sure that the system is functional really and doesn't have flaws, like because it isn't like the whole, because he's like an FBI agent, so he's trying to sort of like be a counter to it. So the whole thing is weird. So
I could be wrong.
Why is he so critical of everything?
I could be wrong, but my take on that aspect of what you're discussing right there is rooted in what he says to Tom Cruise, where he says he's there to find flaws in the system, and then he says there are no flaws, and he says something about the flaws are human or something like that, meaning he does believe that it's a flawed system. He has been sent there to find those flaws, but I think his motivation is based in his theory, which is the flaws are these people running this thing, and I can do the job better.
Maybe. I mean, I didn't read that too much, and I guess those couple of lines of throwing like he wants your job, just never landed with me, because the whole setup of the character is that he's trying to shut this thing down. Like it seems like everybody's trying to shut this program down, and then they're Max von Sydow and Tom Cruise are just trying to show that it is functioning well. So it was very strange. It's just a very mixed way to approach that character. Like just to do one or the other. Don't be confusing. But that's fine. It's a complicated movie.
He's a government agent. He's not going to be consistent.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that it's not. Like you said, the lines of dialogue were there, so I guess I kind of missed them in the shuffle.
No, I think that basically Danny Whitworth's character is a guy who is ambitious. He wants to move his career forward, but a large part of moving his career forward is looking at this experiment that's in place and again, basically auditing it and reporting to his superiors and flexing the higher government muscles over it. I mean, he's an agent of the state, and that's basically how agents of the state work.
But isn't that a
But he's
higher
also-
position than Tom Cruise's position? Why does he need to aspire to something lower than where he is?
Maybe it is. Maybe it's not.
Tom Cruise is a local cop, like in the DC district. Like
Tom
Colin
Cruise
Farrell
is the
is
chief.
That's about to go national.
Yeah,
It's
Tom
about
Cruise
to go.
is
That's
is
what it
the-
is, because it was
yeah.
about to go national.
He's the chief of this new high tech and highly, well, at least in the eyes of the public, highly successful, anti-crime, thing program, I guess. Yes. Anyway, getting back to the question,
That's relegated to one city
yeah, exactly.
at the time, and it's about to go national.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's huge push for people
Well, one thing I would say before I forget, because we're on that subject, is that's also bothered me. It's tough for me to believe that there is zero crime, like that they got it down to zero murders, because there's only 3 precogs and there's only Tom Cruise. I don't see them stopping all murders happening at the same time. Like a lot of big cities have like multiple murders happening at the same time. It's a bit far-fetched that they can get it down to zero, but I get it that for the plot or for the story to make it convincing, they needed to have that as like that's the reason why they're going to go national, because they have zero murders. But I kind of don't buy that that's possible, even given this technology. Like, it's like Gotham. The Batman can't stop all the crime.
Well,
He's
my
one guy.
thought on that is that I think it's okay for them to depict it as it's been this successful, and at this point in time, the only the only murders that the machine spits out are murders of crimes of passion, where nobody thought about it ahead of time. And that even those have dropped to such a low amount that they can handle it and stop them ahead of time. I'm okay with that concept. The only thing that I wish they had done is the very few scenes in the movie where he's talking to what's her name, the lady in the greenhouse, and Max von Sydow. Yeah, yeah. When he's speaking to the people who created the thing, and there's a few scenes where they're kind of talking about the old days, and it is also Tim Blake Nelson has a moment where he talks about how old the program is, how many years they've been doing it, and he kind of refers, when he's asking about the murder, he says, "Oh, it's one of the golden oldies," or something like that. Anytime they're discussing it, I wish they would allude to the fact that when the program started, that they were getting so many murders at any given point in time that they definitely didn't get them all. I'm okay with when the movie starts, they're at this point of success where it's like we get all of them now. We only ones we ever really get are the crimes of passion, so it's a fast kind of business, and we almost never get premeditated murder anymore. But for years, let's say, before the public realized, oh, we can't murder anyone anymore, otherwise this is going to happen to me, I'm going to get stuck in this little tube and I'll be imprisoned my whole life, kind of thing. Like I just feel like it would have been nice to kind of just allude to the fact that there was a growing pains time where they didn't get all of them, and they definitely, some people did get away with murder because they just couldn't get to all the crime that was happening.
I mean, there was that sequence at the beginning where they had that advertisement of murders reaching epidemic proportions, and pre-crime coming in, and I don't think they said like and immediately.
Oh no, I think you're right.
I mean, you're a human being with a brain. You can make that. You can make that transition, right?
Right. No, and that's what I did. That's how I believe it happened. I'm just saying, I feel like the movie would be stronger if there was a way for them to have kind of maybe illustrated it a little more or something. I don't know what I want. I'm not sure what I want. I'm just saying that that's how I feel.
I was going to say they did say in the movie that they've gone a solid 6 years without a single murder. So the point that Jason's making, I think, is, and you too, Gil, where that they don't always make it would have made it more interesting. Like if, let's say, for example, in that first murder that they depict in the movie, if they had just missed it, might have been a more interesting choice. But yeah.
Yeah, or at least just go for, from number one, statistic in the nation, or number 5, they go down to 50, like they're the lowest crime in all 50 states or something. I don't know, like it could have been slightly more realistic than just 0. I think, to make it convincing that it's like a good system. Or
No, that's bullshit. I mean, art is about hyperbole. You go into this, and and that's the brilliance of the first scene, is that you show the system working perfectly, and I mean, right down to the finest detail, where Howard Marks is about to stab. He's like mid-stabbing motion when they come in and stop him. He was going to do it. You know that he was about to kill his wife. You know that the system worked in this case. So it is a steel man showing, like, okay, there's this technology that at some point we may have, and it works. It worked entirely in this situation. Now let's deal with the actual philosophy of whether or not we should actually accept this kind of technology, whether or not we should actually accept this into our lives and livelihoods, and and trust it with. I think it dealt with this situation perfectly. Like, okay, let's get rid of murder. Like, this is a world where we get rid of murder. Isn't that the perfect consequentialist, philosophical, moral situation? Okay, but the process, is the process morally defensible? That's what the movie is dealing with. And that's why it has to go full on Steelman. Why it has to show you Howard Marks in full stab mode just before he's about to kill his wife, and the precogs being entirely right. That's why it has to show you a city that has been free of murder for several years. That's why it has to show you this, seemingly utopian society, because we can then deal with the problem of the process that leads to the consequence.
But isn't the whole point, Minority Report, is the fact that there were these reports that there was inconsistencies?
Yeah, but that's later.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this takes me back to, like, Matt yet again putting a lot of focus on movies that have to do with freedom, where they mostly have to do with just the flaw in the system. I don't think that this movie is more struggling with the moral issue that, is it morally right to stop someone before they do the act? It actually might be, if you can 100% guarantee that that's always the case. But we know, based on the Minority Reports, that it is not. Therefore, because there's the slight possibility that they might be wrong, and he wouldn't, take end up killing his wife, like bringing down the scissors or whatnot, or whatever situation. That's why it's morally wrong. And then you can debate, maybe outside of this movie, that even in a perfect system that has no flaws and is never wrong, if it's the right thing to do. But this specific movie is, the reason why it's wrong is because there's inconsistency in the predictions.
But
And also the other aspect of that they discover in the movie, which is that if you are aware on some level of what your future is supposed to be, that then you have a choice to change it.
Yeah, not to mention that, I mean, that is someone a criminal if you stop them from committing the crime?
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
a whole nother
exactly.
aspect worth discussion too.
Like, you know, if we have knowledge, because the whole free will thing is if we have knowledge of what people are gonna do and we stop them before they become essentially criminals, because especially crimes of passion, these are people that are not generally dangerous for the general public. They're just it's a crime of passion. It has to do with the you know the subject of that passion. Um, so is it the right thing to do to imprison them? That's like a whole other debate. And it's interesting that this movie plays with all these things, but at its core, the main issue with what's going on in the movie is that it's an imperfect system. So you can't do that. It's
So, like 20 minutes ago, what I was trying to get at was to say that there's a lot of really good things in this movie that I like, aside from just Colin Farrell. But there are some stuff that kind of bothers me a little bit. They're, like I said at the beginning, they're not huge things. I don't think they ruin the movie at all, but like I feel like on some level someone kind of mentioned something about this, the implausibility stuff. But just to throw a few things out there, this is in no particular order. um I think their hologram technology sucks. Like, if you were not taking drugs and trying to adjust your state of mind by looking at old family photos the way that he does, that tech is so bad looking, you'd be better off watching a TV screen that we have today. Like 4K is way better than that. That thing looks like crap. You know, there's movies that have depicted hologram technology where it's still supposed to be being developed, you know, and it's not quite like a holodeck, you know, it's not quite perfect and whatever. That still, when I see it, I go, I could see us adopting that tech and then trying to make that better because it's three-dimensional. This was like, dude, you're better off with a flat screen. That looks awful. I mean, no, no. Okay.
but at
Secondly,
least you can touch it.
not really. He could try to, but
You can
anyway.
touch a screen. Yeah.
Yeah. So the ribbon freeway, um, that is probably one of the best examples I could go to if I was trying to discuss movie situations and movie tropes and things like that, and talk about a futuristic thing in a movie that was there to give you an action scene rather than to be plausible. Because, like, I kind of get how that could be a nice bridge between the American car system that we have nowadays and like futuristic mass transit. It's like halfway in between, you know? It's kind of nice and it gives a really great action scene. But why? I have to ask, in a futuristic DC where we have these gigantic high-rise buildings that have to be at least 100 stories tall, why was the freeway system running above it? I got to know that. Like, he gets in his car, starts driving, and he's on the freeway on whatever level he's on. Now, I can understand maybe he lives on a high rise, so maybe he's high up. But then he makes a few turns, and suddenly he's vertical because the ribbon freeway went vertical along the side of a building. Then the action scene starts. He busts out of the car and starts jumping from one car to another. He's doing this for like 45 seconds. How slow are these things going? I could get in an elevator and go down a building that fast. Like, this scene keeps going and going. This has to be at least 100 to 150 story tall building. Why was the freeway going all the way to the top of it? Doesn't make any sense. And if it was going all the way to the top, I can see maybe if it was just the cars for the people who lived in that building. No, that the freeway was at the top level and then it just happened to go down that building. That doesn't make any sense. There's like a ribbon that's like, what, like 800 feet up in the air, just moving. Like, why? That doesn't make any sense. So,
the most implausible part of that scene is that DC is actually going to change its zoning laws in the next 40 years.
That too. Yeah. DC is not a vertical city the way that like New York already is.
It's actually in the law. I think you're not allowed to build anything taller than a third of the height of the Washington Monument in DC. So I mean, I lived in DC for 4 years. So I mean, yeah.
You're Matt, you're absolutely right. And having that you live there, or being that you live there, that's the kind of criticism I definitely take to heart, and I believe that you understand. It's very similar to when I watched Blade Runner 2049, and they get to the Vegas scene and they start showing the futuristic hotels, and then they show Luxor that has been added onto as this like new super pyramid, but the old pyramid still underneath. And I just laughed because I was like, that piece of shit hotel is still going to be around. No. If anything is still around, it's not going to be Luxor. Let me just tell you that much. But anyway,
yeah, I mean, I do think that you touch on a good point. Like, is the action scenes are slightly over the top. Like the thing with the cars, they're like smooth glass. There's like nowhere to grab, and they're moving at like super speeds. There's no way he's like holding on to any of these cars. He would have fallen off of them a long time ago. And there's a similar thing with when they come at him with the jetpacks and stuff. That whole scene is really awkward, and they go flying through like different floors and different like. Then there's like some comic relief there with the. It's just tonally, like some of the action scenes, like I just don't know why it was necessary to go there tonally.
So those are kind of some of the issues I had with it. I just wanted to say before we go too much further, a couple of things. I find it interesting that that one of you guys, I think it was Andrew, was saying that it's got a lot of like kind of noir detective type of feel to it. And I agree. To me, when I think of this movie,
for Andrew, sorry.
I think this movie, it's a strength and a weakness, but okay, so I'm trying to think of how to say this and really, really express what I'm trying to feel here, what I'm saying here. This is a movie that, like Matt said, has a pretty high concept, but really what it is, it kind of de-evolves in the second act into like a Tommy Lee Jones style fugitive movie. It's just a futuristic version of a Tommy Lee Jones fugitive movie. I mean, it's we've all seen it 100 times before. Well, not 100, but let's say at least 7 times before in other movies where someone is falsely accused of murder, and the only thing, and then they become a fugitive, and then since nobody's on their side, they have to solve their murder while avoiding the authorities. That's basically the plot of the middle third of the movie, pretty much. Just like The Fugitive, just like U.S. Marshals, just like Double Jeopardy, and
Mission Impossible too.
To some extent, perhaps, but what I love about this movie is that it takes that, and as Matt alluded to, utilizes, I'm not going to say the best, but certainly a very good MacGuffin with the title of the movie, Minority Report, because again, if you're listening to this at this point, you should definitely have seen the movie, spoilers and everything, but he gets to the point where he does the thing. They set up what he needs to do. He needs to break back into his own headquarters, get to the girl precognitive, and download the minority report, so that he can prove his innocence, just like all those movies I just said, only in a high-tech sci-fi sort of way, right? And he does all of this. He goes through so much. He goes through in what is, in my opinion, the best scene in the movie, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But he goes through so much to achieve this. And then when he's getting it, they find out about him, so he has to go on the run with the girl. Then he gets to the high-tech guy who helped him out in the past, and he actually is able to download the thing.
Rufus
And
P. Riley.
I'm sorry?
That's the name of the guy, Rufus.
Oh, yeah, Rufus. But then, as Matt said, you know, big MacGuffin moment. He turns to the girl, and all they're able to record from her is him gunning down the guy, just like the other two twins, you know, witnessed. And he's like, "Where?" Yes, he's like, "Where's my Minority Report?" And she's like, "You don't have one. We all saw the same thing. You fucking killed this guy." You know, and so, and suddenly, the whole movie shifts when that happens, and I love that because this movie, like I said, in the hands of a lesser person, could have basically been a cheesy sci-fi, you know, fugitive movie. And by the end of the film, it really turns into something entirely different that I love. But to bring up another problem, I agree with what Andrew was kind of touching on. I don't know how they would have done it because the movie's so focused on Tom Cruise. So I don't know how it would have been done. I can't imagine anything that I would have done that would have made this movie better. I can't think of any changes or anything like that. But it's odd to me that Tom Cruise's wife plays such a pivotal role in the third act of the film and isn't even introduced until 10 minutes before she becomes relevant. And that is a weird thing to me because the actress is so good, the character is so good, all of it works. I don't have any issue with it, but it feels weird. Like she's so important, it feels like she should have been around in some way, at least introduced in some way. And I don't know how I would have done it. I just, to me,
She
it's a little
technically
weird.
was in the movies.
Did you forget that scene with Colin Farrell at the beginning where you're like, coffee, do you want sugar? Oh, I don't have sugar. Do you want, I mean,
not good enough. Not good enough.
I mean, that was like more than an hour before the third act.
Not good enough. No, I don't know.
See, I actually thought I thought she died because they mix her in with the scene with the kid, and I'm like, did she die? And I've seen this movie before, and I was like, well, is she dead as like the kid? Like something happened to the two of them? You know, like it's.
I will admit I had forgotten about the Colin Farrell scene. I love the sugar coffee thing. It is a good interaction that they have with each other. And actually that's a really good scene because it also establishes that location in a good way.
Actually, this might be a good segue to my biggest criticism of the movie.
Okay.
Because during that scene, his ex-wife refers to John Anderton's apartment, like his current apartment, as that was our apartment. And if you could just cut that line out, it would make abundantly more sense when Agatha was in their house talking about how much love there was in the house and, their life with Sean and everything like that. She said, that was our apartment. That implies that they were living in that apartment with Sean.
Yeah, and what's the problem with that?
Well, it might have been their summer home. No?
On, Agatha is in the house.
Yeah, but like Gil just said, they actually say that house that they're in was their summer home.
Oh, holy shit! Did I miss that?
So familiar, Matt.
Yeah. I'm disappointed in you, Matt. Come on.
Of all the things.
No. Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember. I can't remember who said it. I want to say maybe it was the Colin Farrell scene. I don't know. Someone is talking to her, and she says something to the effect of, "Yeah, we used to come here back then, but not any. Obviously, not anymore because they're not together anymore, and so on and so forth." And the kid died.
Okay, well, maybe I'll rewatch it again tonight and you know, kick myself in the
Shame. Shame. No, okay. No, okay. I
No,
was
but
gonna say that
yeah.
I liked when you guys were talking about the noir detective story aspect of it. I was gonna say I love in movies when this happens and it's done well, but it just I was so sad. Like I said, I hadn't seen this movie in over 15 years, so I didn't remember every detail of it. But uh man, Colin Farrell gets the Kevin Spacey LA Confidential treatment. You know, I mean, he is introduced as a competitor and as a problem, as a source of conflict to our main character. And halfway through the movie, even though he's a source of conflict, he is a moral character. He's a cop doing his job, and he is trying to do the right thing and solve the crime and find out who's behind all of this stuff. And he does, and he discovers everything, and he's right on he tells the audience what's happening because he has figured it all out. He lays it out, and Christopher Plummer's like, "You got me." Bam, you're dead.
oh, next one, sign off.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
didn't have to say that.
I thought it was
That's
Christopher Plummer too.
I'm sorry. No, I knew it was Max von Sydow. I do that every now and then. They're both so great. But yes, wow. And he just like in LA Confidentials, like the perfect scene to give the audience everything they need for the rest of the movie. And he's like, "Oh, guess what? Pre-crime's not working anymore. Boom, you're dead." It's just great. Such a great scene. I totally forgot about it. But
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that repetition too of Danny Whitwer, Colin Farrell's character just kissing that cross on his fist, like before his fist fight with John Anderton at the beginning, and just as he's about to be murdered,
yeah,
is kind of poignant. So, yeah, Andrew, you haven't talked in a while.
Well, I wanted to say a couple of positive things about the movie and highlight two of my favorite scenes. The first, of course, is the greenhouse scene. I don't recall the actress's name, but it was a very exposition scene that she made a lot of fun, and especially with improvising that kiss that she gives to Anderton towards the end, I thought it was just hysterical. The other scene, and I can easily say it was my favorite scene in the entire movie. Is
I
the
know
eye transplant scene.
Yep.
Yeah.
Peter Stormare.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Greatest scene in the whole movie.
I was waiting for something to bring it
sequence.
up, but that whole sequence is trash. That's like one of the worst things for me in the movie.
How dare you?
It's so like it doesn't make any sense what's going on there. Like that whole
let's let Andrew finish what he likes about it.
But
then
first
you can go
finish.
next.
Well, I just love it because it is so over the top, and it honestly does feel a bit out of place for the movie. But I mean,
it's the best thing in the movie.
You got the kind of cliche thing, like, "Oh yeah, I was a doctor, you ruined my life, and now you're at my mercy." and the his assistant too. I thought she was pretty funny. So it was just very over the top, and it just made me laugh a lot, and I appreciate it. And that guy, he's just fucking hilarious in everything that he does.
He's great for sure. But come on, to me, like the cherry on the top was the eyes rolling down the slope and almost falling into the drain. Come on, like it all of a sudden became a cartoon. The whole movie to me, like it's just like was so unnecessary.
Well,
like
for me, when I refer to it as my favorite sequence, I'm basically saying from the moment he gets to Peter Stormare's office or house or whatever that place is. I guess it's a house.
I think it was like a motel that My impression was that it was like a cheap motel, and he's like moving around because he's doing all this on the black market.
Maybe. I mean,
and he doesn't want a like solid address that he can get arrested for.
well, he's got an operating chair there, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, from the moment he gets there to the end of the spider scene that's my favorite couple of sequences in the whole movie.
Yeah.
But,
by the way, they absolutely stole that.
No, they didn't. It was just similar.
No. John Wick, the John Wick sequence.
John Wick, yeah.
Yeah, they totally stole that from Minority.
It was similar.
Oh, for the most recent one.
Yes.
Yeah.
John Wick 4, the dragon's breath scene. Gil, awesome. I wanted to bring up that scene because it will be a callback to one of our best episodes, I feel, that we've done. I could not remember this when we were having this previous episode, but when I saw this, I almost jumped out of my seat because I remembered finally this was the movie, one of several, but this was the main one. This was the scene in the movie I wanted to bring up when we were discussing The Princess Bride and Stardust, because this was the example I was trying to come up with. I think this movie does it a little bit better than Stardust did, but that whole discussion we had about the end of Stardust, when there's such similar scenes. You've got the heroes who need something from this shady character. They work out a deal with each other, and then after the hero is in some way or another incapacitated and at their mercy, the whole mood shifts and it goes to, oh my gosh, they're in peril. Now this person who is not a very moral person, this bad person, can do whatever they want with them. And then, surprise, surprise, they just actually uphold their end of the deal.
Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Not in Stardust and not in Minority Report.
I think it's fine. I don't know. I think it's a mood thing.
The movie would be fine without it. Like, you can find some other eye doctor. It doesn't have to be someone from his past. Like, there's a bit too many tropes for sure. There's the trope of like trying to like clear your own name. There's the trope of the, you could have toned these like points while still getting the points across. Like, I don't think it was necessary. Like, the movie has enough tricks and toys and a lot of things in it, and it's very complex to add like these tonally just very off subplots and stuff to get to where he needs to get. But it's fine. It's much like The Dark Knight. Like we said, I think you just kind of forgive them because, like Andrew said, it was enjoyable because it was over the top, or because it's just like it's fluff, but it gets us to where we need to get. Like, he needs the eyes. I just feel like you mentioned how like I can't see too many ways of like making this movie better. I can. There's all these tonally bad like sequences that didn't have to be that way tonally. Spielberg was just trying to add some levity to it, and I just don't think he's got the chops for it.
I think that the tone of this movie is a huge success. I think there are a few moments that to me make me roll my eyes, but I really think that it works. This scene in particular, the one with Peter Stormare, it is so incredibly unsettling. It's such a visceral scene to watch, and especially once he is.
Well, anything with eyes for sure. Yeah.
No, but not just that. The fact that I think most people feel the way I do. I've had to go under several times for operations in my life. I think about 7 now or something like that. If I don't want to go back and think about all of them, but yeah, like several times. And I think most people have a pretty healthy fear of being in that situation. And not only is this an operation he's about to get, it's shady. I mean, this is a bad situation he's in. And then as soon as he's doped up, he finds out that this guy has every reason to do him wrong. And but you know, I mean, I don't see any problem with the outcome. I think it's such a huge relief when he wakes up from the situation and he's groggy and whatever, and then to follow that with that again hugely visceral moment where they are actually trying to be nice to him. They gave him a sandwich, they gave him some milk, they gave him this stuff, and it's like, oh, it's so disgusting when he takes the rotten stuff instead, just purely by accident. It's not like they did it on purpose to him. And then the ice bath scene is really good. The spider, and they keep flashing back to the alarm clock, that the futuristic 8 timer, and they're like, oh, it's not, he still needs a couple hours. He's really pushing it. He might go blind. And the damn spider is there, and that the air bubble going up, like, which I just read in the IMDb trivia was something that Tom Cruise practiced so they could do practically rather than with CGI. I really like the scene, and I even like the tone of going into it. Like, I like how the police are throwing these little spider bots out so that they don't have to go door to door themselves, and the public responds with what I think is a very appropriate amount of outrage. Like, everybody knows what these things are. It's not new to them, and they're in a crappy neighborhood. So they've probably had this happen before. And this mother who has 2 small children are there, and she grabs the smaller of the 2 and she holds the kid on her lap while the spider is like violating them basically. And she's yelling to the other one, just hold still, it's going to be over in a second, you know, and all this stuff like that. And it's so good, you know, the way that they play this whole thing out. And like in this scene that Matt's talking about, where the camera is drifting over the ceiling from one room to another, from one unit to another, and there's these people who are, this is such a scummy neighborhood that the police have done this to them so many times. It's basically like in our world, when you're in a bad neighborhood and the ghetto birds are flying over, you know, the police helicopters are flying overhead. It's just such a normal occurrence after a while. You know, these people are in the middle of having sex with each other when the spiders show up, and they look annoyed. They're just like, all right, hurry up, scan me. And then they get right back to it. This other couple is in the middle of what could become a violent domestic dispute. And the spiders start crawling on them, and they're like, ah, and they get eye scanned, and then they immediately go, they don't skip a beat. They go right back to their argument. And the cops are certainly not going to do anything about them because they're small fries, they're small potatoes. They're not what they're there for. You know, all of these little things, some of it can be seen as kind of too comical. Like you said, the eyes falling down the drain and all this stuff like that. There are moments where it gets a little too silly, but I think in that scene, all those little moments of levity, like, are part of telling the story. And I don't know. I can't say enough about this scene. I think it stands out, but only because it's the best scene in the movie. And I don't know.
Yeah,
I also
because it
can't
doesn't
say enough
belong
about,
in it.
I love Peter Stormare. I don't know if I've ever seen a performance of his I didn't like. He's just so amazing.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting question. Is like, because if there's one blind spot that Spielberg has, is humor and comedy. Like, he just doesn't get that very well. I'm sure he had a few movies where he hit the right mark, but he's just. It would be interesting to like think back to any successful.
Catch Me If You Can.
I don't like that movie. It's not great.
Really?
Again, because it's a humorous movie, I just falls flat. I really think like Spielberg just, even though he's kind of a playful, I feel like Hook, maybe there was some humor there that worked, but that was more Robin Williams probably nailed those moments.
And
Dustin
Bob
Hoffman.
Hoskins and Dustin Hoffman. All their scenes together make me laugh so much.
The speech why parents hate their children still cracks me up to this day.
That speech has affected me so more than I can tell you. That speech is 80. It's probably at least 20% of the reason why I don't plan to have any kids. You're laughing. I'm not laughing.
It's not the first time you mentioned it on the podcast. I think I'm editing the episode. That
seriously?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I'm
I need to rewatch that movie just for that line. I guess I don't remember that line.
I didn't know I had ever talked about that, but that's interesting.
Uh,
Okay.
Well, Gil, one thing that you have to admit is that we did steal a shot from Minority Report when we were making Reset.
Well, yeah, it was one of the inspirations for the look of the movie.
Yeah.
So obviously, no, I mean,
Well-
I'm not putting this movie down. Like I gave it an 8, and I gave it a 9 back when. But I'm just saying that like watching this movie now is like like this stuff just doesn't belong in this movie. Like I understand comic relief, but this was just plain silly.
Well, since you guys have brought up the look,
Paul.
I'm sure that Matt has a lot to say about this movie, particularly about the look of it and everything. But I just wanted to get your guys' opinion because I don't dislike the look of this movie. I did find it very interesting that this movie is so, I don't know, how would you describe it? It's like, how would you put into words the way this movie looks? I mean, it's like there's yeah, it's just crazy. The look of it is so noticeably, surreal and everything. But it's funny because to me, this movie, every scene of this movie looks the way a movie would traditionally do a flashback. And the flashback that's in the movie where he goes to the pool scene, when isn't the flashback when he's waking up from the yeah, it is. It's when he's waking up from the eye surgery.
Just before he wakes up from it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's when he's sleeping from the eye surgery. Yeah. So in the flashback where we actually get to see what happened to his son, the flashback is shot totally normal.
Yeah.
So it's like he flip-flopped those things. I find very interesting, but I'm just watching this movie. There's moments where it blows out so much, and I'm just like, Janus, oh my God. Like, I don't know. I'm sure you guys had more to say about it. There's moments where I'm just kind of like, I like it, but I'm like, it seems like a lot,
He does. Yeah, I think we've mentioned also in the AI episode, he's got this thing of like shafts through windows where it's not completely necessary, but maybe in this movie it worked more than others.
Well, I kind of recall working on Lawan's both the previous and the the full blown every morning movies, and working in that set and just setting up a bunch of just like putting a bunch of unbleached muslin on the windows and pushing as much light through it as I possibly could and just blowing it out. And I kind of feel like Janusz did a lot of that on this movie. I don't feel like that. I've read the American Cinematographer article. He used diffusion and he he burned out the highlights. And as far as I'm concerned, that's something that it's a defensible decision so long as you're shooting on film. If you shot this on digital, it would look like shit. I mean, even today, if you shot it on digital, it would look like shit. But
yeah, it is very much overexposed, so it wouldn't work very well on digital.
Right.
This is funny. I did not read this ahead of time, but we're sitting here talking about this now. And in the trivia, it says Janusz Kaminski is a regular cinematographer for Steven Spielberg films. When Spielberg approached him for this film, he told him to create, and this is in quotes, the ugliest, dirtiest movie either of them had ever seen. Or had ever made. Sorry, not seen. That's funny.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't surprise me, but I mean you can even see in the scene outside the house with John Anderton and his wife when he realizes, holy shit, Anne Lively is Agatha's mother. There's actually a shot where you can see the texture of the diffusion that they were using on the lens
Weird.
due to the backlight. Yeah, you can actually see that. And that's what was creating so much of the halation through the course of the movie and so on and so forth. But you can actually see the texture of the diffusion in that shot if you care to look. But
I
yeah.
care. It's interesting. I guess, yeah, it seems like, except for Matt, who really loves this movie, I feel like the three of us, the rest of the three of us, are kind of like feel the same way about it, just in different parts, which is interesting. I didn't think that we would disagree on the specific parts that were like good or not so good.
Did you guys again, this is another thing I don't have a problem with, but I just kind of noticed. Did you guys feel that it was that this movie has a not a troubling, but at least an oddly large amount of product placement in it?
There definitely was.
Well, I think that was part of the world building.
I think it was too. That's why I don't have a problem with it. I just
Yeah.
notice it. It's very noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, like having a huge Aquafina, like billboard right there on the ultra, postmodern freeway or whatever. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was all over the place. But
As far as predicting the future, I definitely think that the whole ad thing is very similar to what we have nowadays, where
Absolutely. They
like
have balls,
wherever
you
you
can
go,
walk in,
like all the ads are directed at you specifically. Like in the movie, they call him by his name, but in our world, I feel like they're like so targeted to you, like and based on your searches and everything. So
yeah.
Also, we already have malls where when you walk in, there's a like speaker system where like the whole mall around you can't hear it, but it'll like as you get to a certain point in the room when you're walking in the entrance of a building, it can say something and it'll be like really quiet to someone 10 feet away, but like you can hear something directed at you,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw some clip on Facebook or something that there was like an airport or something where if you go there, like it can detect you and then only show you your flight information and nothing else. Like something
Oh,
weird
wow.
like that. Like I don't know how something along those lines where like it's tailored to whoever the person that's looking, and then another person looks and like it's something different. Something
That's
weird.
interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyways,
Did you all read about the world building that kind of went into the movie and the strategy of Spielberg getting together a bunch of people to design what a realistic future would look like?
No.
Yeah, I don't remember the specifics. I definitely came across it, I think, in the IMDb trivia or the Wikipedia, where he just had a meeting of the minds, a lot of different experts in their field. And it came to like designing every visual element of the movie, from the cars to everything, the phones, the little discs that they used. So I thought that was pretty neat that he wanted to try to make it feel like it was a future we could actually have.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, Spielberg has always been meticulous, if nothing else. Well, no, I mean, he's more creative than he is meticulous, but
I feel like if I didn't make this clear earlier, I feel like this movie is so good because in the hands of a lesser person, it would have just fallen apart or been very mediocre. And
right.
Spielberg managed to take, like I said, this movie that starts out as one thing and kind of evolves into something else and then kind of lands at the end where it lands and says what it says. And it just, I think it works. And it's surprising to me that it works because of all the stuff we've been talking about. But I think it works because of him mostly.
Yeah, and I mean to kind of allude to what I was saying before, that I'm not even sure that the filmmakers were fully aware of the depth of what they were talking about. I mean, just that last scene with Max von Sydow, where the precogs had already seen Lamar Burgess / Max von Sydow shoot Tom Cruise / John Anderton and kill him. And John Anderton is talking to Lamar and just saying, no doubt the precogs have already seen this. And, you're in a dilemma right now, right? Because if you kill me, then you prove that that pre-crime works. If you don't kill me, then you prove that we've basically been committing crimes against innocent people for the last 6 years, right? He didn't say those exact words. I'm putting words in John Anderton's mouth and the writer and
You
so on.
said you had it memorized.
No, I do. I do, and that's why I'm saying that I'm putting words in his mouth. And Lamar decides to kill himself instead of John. And there's a profundity in that moment where the film is making a statement of there is an element of free will. And I mean, it's kind of weird that free will and determinism, and also compatibilism in the middle, is really, as far as I can tell, one of the most fundamental moral quandaries and moral questions that we have. And it seems like most of us don't even delve into that question at all. And this movie actually dealt with that question. And I mean, it gave an answer that I'm not sure is correct, but at least it dealt with the question and did so in a serious way.
Hopefully, most movies raise questions and not give definitive answers because it's up to the viewer to some degree.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I mean, honestly, I think upon multiple viewings, the answer that Minority Report gave was that there's some kind of a compatibilist answer to the question of free will that, for the most part, determinism is true, but that there is some element of free will.